I'll introduce myself. My name is Matt Sheard. I'm a solution architect within the R&D team in Microsoft within Redmond. My role particularly within the organization is to lead up the solution architects that focus on retail, although we'll be covering quite a vast range of AX today in this application overview, retail only being a component of it. And I'll introduce to you my colleague, my partner in crime, Lachlan.
Yeah, my name is Lachlan Cash, and I work in the same team as Matt. Today we're going to do a bunch of sort of demos. We're going to stay mostly out of PowerPoint in the product. I'm going to mostly focus on the manufacturing piece as we go through this.
Very good. So a lot of the feedback we get from everybody is keep away from PowerPoint, and show us more products. So our aim through the whole process is to shower you with as much functionality as we possibly can. We only just kind of like to scrape the surface, but certainly give you an overview of the capability in the application. To those of us that are new with Dynamics AX, think of this as a high-level demonstration. To those of us that have been around Dynamics AX for quite some time, perhaps look at it more as a refresher, or maybe some insight into some additional key functions that you may not have been aware about. So to kick things off, I will take you through what today's session is going to look like. So we've kind of set this up pretty much like an end-to-end workflow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight for you the many different ways within Dynamics AX that we can actually service our customer. And servicing our customer can be in many facets. One that comes to mind particularly for all of us is how can we generate revenue and how can we get sales orders into the system. So on that note, Lachlan, an unscripted moment. How many different methods or different ways do you think I can get sales orders into the system?
Maybe 4 or 5.
Anyone want to yell out another number? Indulge me? Anybody? 3? 10? Okay, maybe that's a little bit overachieving, but potentially. I'll take you through the many aspects. There's 5 out of the box right now, with a new one coming in our next CU release. And I'm going to step you through each one of those scenarios and talk about how we can actually get details into the system via those different mechanisms. So that's going to be the first part. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to hand over to Lachlan. We're going to tag team through this presentation. He's then going to take that output, that sales order, that demand, and he's going to take a look at some of the manufacturing capabilities within the solution. He's going to look at planning, and planning then is going to in turn create some firm plan purchase orders against raw materials and also against some production items. Here we'll take a look at some of the capacity that's available within our shop floor. And in addition to that, we'll also work through the work order process or production order processes. I believe Lachlan's going to touch on several manufacturing strategies, looking at our discrete manufacturing, and also take you through some lean capability within the solution. Once we've done that, then we're going to work through and firming up that purchase order. And then Lachlan's also going to then launch us into the RFQ process, understand what's available from a vendor standpoint in that request for quote. How do we gain details from our vendor in terms of bidding for work? What does the portal actually look like? So he can show you how that plays a significant part in that order to cash, procure to pay type scenario. I'm then going to come through the process and I'm going to start wearing my distribution hat, for want of a better word. And we'll look at ways in which we can bring inventory into the system. So the first way traditionally would be to receive that purchase order through the natural client of AX. I'm going to show you some of the warehousing capability, and we'll work through receiving that particular purchase order through an RF device, and then updating that inventory. Then what's going to happen is Lachlan will take over again from a manufacturing standpoint. So we saw a lot of the planning, a lot of the production highlights. We're then going to get into issuing raw material that we've received in. And again, looking at different ways to issue that through the client itself. We can issue material to our work order, or alternatively, we can start to utilize the handheld device and use that from a picking standpoint. So picking raw material from our warehouse location, setting that down or putting that down on a particular nominated location within our work center, our shop floor. And then through that process, we'll go through and consume the material through manufacture. And then I'll take over and I'll do some reporter's finished capabilities. So we bring this inventory back into stock. The ultimate goal then is to take that original sales order we created, work it through the process. Then what I'm going to do is move into the sales side of things. And in that sales side of things, I'll dispatch the order. We'll do the reporter's finish, as I mentioned. I'll take you through some transportation capabilities. We'll do some rate shopping. We'll find out who's got the best freight for us. We'll assign that to the order. We'll then go through and fully dispatch that and ship it to our customer. And then the last piece of all of that is really to look at some KPI information and really take some of the details that we've processed and how we can represent that up in reporting fashion, whether it be through roll centers, whether it be through statistical KPI reporting, whatever that mechanism is, we'll touch on a bit of those. So hopefully that's kind of set the scene in terms of what we're going to present for you today. All right, so here is a highlight of the different ways in which we're able to get orders within the system. The very first pillar that we see there is really around core Dynamics AX. So for those of us that have been around, this is nothing new. This is just the standard straight sales order entry screen. It gives us a header, it gives us lines, it gives us a conclusion. We then start working through the dispatch process. There's some neat tricks in here in terms of being able to apply variants. We also have what we call a fast order create function. So that's predominantly the major way that most folks would think about being able to get a sales order into the system. The second one is through what we call our call center operation. Who's familiar with call center? Can I get a raise of hands, please? Okay. Call center, although we bundle it within our retail offering, is not necessarily always focused on retail organizations. Any organization that has a high turnover of distributed items, whether they manufacture them themselves or whether they on-sell them, a centralized customer service call center capability that provides call scripts, as well as a real simple view around what that customer looks like, how I can take notes, how I can take orders very quickly, get them shipped and in and out the door. I'll show you what that application or module looks like so you can get a view of how we can get orders into the system that way. E-commerce is another that we provide. We've partnered with several ISVs that have taken our e-commerce engine and presented it in their applications, Sitecore being one of them. We also have our native SharePoint client where we can take online orders. Those online orders are then synchronized back into the core app and then present themselves as sales orders within the solution. Most of you have probably been familiar with the term Modern POS. Modern POS is our Windows 8 device-driven application, which is a take on our current Enterprise POS, which is our register point-of-sale application. The Modern POS application is very tile-based, very Windows look and feel. I'll take you through a bit of a demo on that. And then just before I get to that, take a look at Web POS. We also then have our traditional Enterprise POS, which would typically run on a point-of-sale device, the cash register that you see in store. I'll show you how we can actually create customer orders through there, in addition to cash sales. And the one that I wanted to hold off till last is really around we call it our Web POS offering. So basically it's taking that modern POS look and feel, but being able to run it directly over a browser. So, you know, I don't want to say that this is strictly for retail because it's not. Yes, it has some retail components to it, but think about it if you've got a mobile sales force. Having the ability via a device, as long as there's an internet connection, that I can go out and I can take orders and I can process orders on the spot. So we're moving, I guess, our retail channel more and more across the omni-channel platform, more and more across and integrating in with distributors. So I don't want to call it necessarily a point-of-sale device, which often has a reference of retail. What it is now is starting to move towards a mobile selling device. And I'll give you some demonstration of what that represents. all of which we're showing you within Core Dynamics AX, no ISV solutions. All of this is native out of the box that comes with the solution. Sure, we've done some configuration, but for the most part, it is all core product. So with that said, I'm just going to switch over now onto my demo. This screen may or may not be familiar to you, but just for those of you that aren't familiar with it, this is the out-of-the-box Contoso Electronics Superstore e-commerce website. And if we just take a look at what we see in front of us here, you'll see the Contoso Electronics banner at front. I've got a catalog of items going across the top of the page, which have been grouped accordingly. I have some audio, car audio, headphones, MP3 players, and some speakers. I've got some camera equipment, some computers, some home appliances, some phones, and some televisions that I'm able to buy here. And you'll notice on this screen I've got some banners that are appearing here, which can be my product promotions. Any sort of deal prices can be flowing through the banner and advertising to the customer as I'm walking through this process. Scrolling down ever so slightly there, I can see some additional favorites. Once I start logging in, I can see things that I've looked at in the past, and I can also get suggestions of similar products and like products. Any recommendations by staff, any evaluation they've done, I can populate those so that folks that are on this e-commerce site can get a look at what people working in the organization would recommend. And then I've got another option here clearly which shows some of my clearance items in view. So all of which, this item is very user-friendly in terms of being able to process an order. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in. Now I've got the option here to register as a new customer, or what I can do is sign as an existing one. In this case, I'm going to sign in as an existing one. This is my email address with my password, and then I sign in. Once I do that, here is where things such as all of my loyalty, as well as all of my account details, and any gift cards that have been issued, I've got full visibility to those via the account tab in the top right-hand corner. But if I wanted to work through a traditional sale within this process, I'd simply go to my catalog item or my category here for cameras, and the solution then would give me real-time a view of what inventory items have been catalogued and assorted to this online store. You'll notice here that when I have stockouts through the distribution channel, I'll be displayed very quickly that this particular item is not available in stock and therefore I'm not able to use it. But predominantly what we will see here is some specific pricing. If there was customer specific pricing tied to my account, by all means I would see this information. What I would simply do is I could click on that item, I could get some visual there in terms of what it looks like, but simply adding it to cart then puts this item into my shopping cart. If I wanted to, I could add this to a favorite, or I could print out the data definitions or data specifications. If this is one of my favorites, when I go in store and I go to buy this item, I can get a list of those favorites come up also. All right, I'll now go over into my computers, and why don't we go and add a laptop? Yeah, this one will do. And we'll add that to the cart as well. So now I have two items within my cart. I'm now going to go ahead and I'm going to check out. In the checkout process, it says to me, well, what sort of delivery information do we actually need? Do I want to ship this item? Do I want to pick it up in store? So this is now, from a retail standpoint, folks, where the whole omni-channel starts to play a very important role in an integrated solution. By using the collect from store, what I'm able to do then is use that as my dispatch. I can then do all the logistics and send the item to the store. The customer can then go in and collect those items. Or alternatively, they may already be in store. And then I can go in and I can park this order, present it, and go and ship directly from the point of sale device. What we're going to do from today, though, is choose a delivery method of ship. Once I choose ship, it's going to ask me for the shipping address. I'll just use my 123 Anywhere Street. You'll see that information come up. On the right-hand side, it tells me what my available shipping methods are. I've got some standard overnight, I've got some next day air, I've got some ground, or I've got some traditional standard 3-day delivery. We're just going to choose this traditional standard in this particular instance. I'm now going to move through the process of the order. Going down the side of the page here, if I had any coupons, discounts, I can add those. If I wanted to use a gift card, maybe that somebody has purchased for me, I can certainly apply that, or I can accrue some loyalty points on this if I had a loyalty card. But what we are going to do is simply go through the payment process. So the name on the card is just going to be my name. And then I'll use my famous credit card. We'll say it expires in 2016. Over here we'll say that my shipping address is the same as my delivery address. I'll then move through the process. I'm now giving me a summary of the order, telling me, Matt, you don't have any loyalty and you haven't applied that. Here's the billing and the shipping address. Here's the payment method that you're using with the total. I'll go ahead now and submit that order. So at this stage, what's happening is AX is returning for me, or the e-commerce side is returning for me an e-confirmation, of which then that I can print that out and I can keep that with me, whether I was going to pick it up or whether it was going to get delivered. In this case, it's getting delivered. So let me now jump over into AX and show you how this process now ends up back as a sales order within the solution. I'm going to jump over into retail, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to run what we call our P job, or our channel transaction job. So by doing my channel transaction and selecting run now, any store, any online store, what it's basically doing is a transaction pullback. So all of those transactions now are coming back into AX. Typically, we set this up to poll. It can run every minute, every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, just depends on customers' particular requirements. Once that's run, we can confirm that we have our online transaction, and we'll see that here coming through. Yes, there is one dated today, the 18th, no problem. Then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll synchronize my online orders. Underneath my periodic function here, again, I'm triggering these manually. These could be set up to run as batches. And then what would happen then is a sales order will be created in the standard sales order module within AX. So if we went to our all sales orders here, you'll see there's the sales order for the particular item with the 2 products on. Okay, so that's the e-commerce way of being able to get an order into the system. The next option I want to show you is what we call our modern POS, our modern point of sale. So here in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log on. By logging on to this device, and you'll just notice that I'm using an emulator here, what will happen is AX will say, well, look, actually, I might just use a different ID. Bear with me for 1 second. Sorry, guys. All right. So you'll notice now that I start to get, and the whole idea here is touch is very important. My laptop's not touch, but keep in mind that I've got full touch capabilities on this device. I've got some real estate here on the screen where I can brand my particular store or my particular mobile sales team. I can then go over into my add sale function, and very similar sort of process to what we saw with regard to e-commerce. I'm able to come along here and I'm able to say, look, let's go and find the customer. By typing in my name, it's doing a real-time call, it's finding that customer record, and it's allowing me then to go and add that to the sale. You'll notice there that Matt's been added to the sale. I'll now be able to go in to my numpad here and choose either search or filter criteria to find the products that I want. I'm just going to type in a shirt just to keep things, and you'll notice there that a boy's t-shirt's returned. Maybe I'll do a suit to give us some more. There we go. I got a trim fit suit. Selecting that particular product, you'll notice there I've got the full visual, which gives me an outline of the suit. It gives me some details about it. I've got the option as the user to come along and say, well, look, what color? Unfortunately, I only have dark gray in stock, so that's what's only been presented. Yes, who am I kidding? I'm a size 32. I'll then choose a regular. Here's some specifications over here on the right. But notice also, I've got some related products that have been set up in the system with some additional suggestions to say, look, maybe you like the trim fin, but we've also got a stretch wool available to you. Once I've got those details, I can simply add them to the sale also. So here it is in a POS device, attached to a customer, my trim fit suit. What I'm able to do at this stage is go into my tasks. In my tasks, I'll choose my transaction options, and now we'll go ahead and we'll create our customer order. By doing so, the system says to me, well, what do you want me to do with that? Do you want me to pick it up or do you want me to ship it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ship all of those lines. And again, it's going to ask me for some required values. I've got some shipping addresses here. Which one do I want? We'll choose the 1423 Anywhere Street. We'll select that. Over here on the right-hand side, it's giving me the available options. We'll do some standard overnight. Do you want to charge additional money for that? Yes, say it's $30 to ship it. Let's go OK. We're going to ship it then on the 20th. And then now what the system is saying to me is, well, look, we require a deposit for all shipped orders, hence why it's asking me for $56.12. We'll go ahead and say, all right, we'll take payment on that. Now, do you want to take payment on that now, just for the deposit, or do you want me to authorize the balance? So we can say we'll pay deposit and authorize the balance. I'll go $56.12. It will then say, do you want to do the balance on the card? Yes, I do. What's the card number? What's my expiration date? What's the security code on the back of the card? All right, and it's now asking me to email the receipt to the person that was actually assigned to the order. Now, what's happening from a standpoint of AX? We have real-time services that are running here now. So it's actually looking into that POS. It's telling me, look, there's no change due on this one. Close it out. The order has been created. I don't need to run any other process within AX. I can strictly go back to all sales orders here now, and what you will see is that new sales order with the trim fit suit being created and standard within the solution. So that's option number 2 in terms of how we're able to get product sales information back into the solution. All right. I'm going to take you through a little bit. I won't go through standard sales order process. I think most people understand and are familiar with that. For those of us that are new to Dynamics AX, I will quickly show you, but I won't process it end to end. Underneath accounts receivable is where we'll find our all sales order screen. Here at the top right, left-hand corner, I'm able to say, yes, create new sales order. It's going to prompt me for the customer information and some header details. Once I click OK there, I'm then presented with a sales order that has lines associated to it. And you'll notice here I've got an item number with a product description, a quantity and a price. That represents the body. Jumping down into the line details here, it gives me some additional information regarding that product on the sales order. So that's the standard traditional way. If we do just jump over here into the call center, I'll take you through some of the capability we see within this particular module. So on the call center, you can notice that the form is broken up very much like all our standard forms. We have a common, we have an inquiry, we have a journal, we have a periodic, we have a report, and we have a setup. Now, because I didn't get too many show of hands in terms of understanding what call center does, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this module. What you'll see there is it's taken core areas from, say, the accounts receivable and presented for me the AR master or the customer master in the top right-hand corner. It's also brought the sales orders from the accounts receivable menu and positioned it here as well. Through the inquiries, I've got some standard filtering there at looking at some back order capability, as well as some customer item statistics in full on-time delivery, those types of options. And in our periodic is where we can start to set up a whole host of things which really represent some of our RFM analysis and customer coupon management as well. The top right-hand corner where you see journals is really where an individual would typically live in a call center type environment. So I'm going to open up our customer service journal, and this then brings up a whole new form for me. And in that form, you'll start to see the ribbon across the top of the page. But the first thing I'm going to do is ask for me, well, who have I got on the line? Who's on the call? How can I process this order for you quickly? Using some of the search criteria, I can determine whether that's phone number, account ID, name, description. I can define what that search looks like. Here I'm just going to use my same account by selecting that customer. And what you will see in here, or what the customer service representative sees, is a snapshot of the customer with their information, such as their address, along with what their telephone number and email is. But then more importantly, you'll see an updated list of any customer notes. customers late in payment, last order didn't ship. All of that information is centralized and visible there in the notes section. But more importantly, what I also can see there is a history of sales orders that have been created, and very quickly I can get to drill down on those by looking at the lines at the bottom here to see what they represented. And you can see they bought a youth accessory combo kit, 5 of those at $69 each. So instantly, as a customer service rep, I've got that connectivity with my customer, that feel of importance, that what you can see there is a listing of all the previous purchases that I've actually made. To create a new sales order, it really is simple by clicking in the sales order screen at the top. What you'll find is the header details get automatically populated because we selected that customer. So the defaults come across from our customer master setup. And in here I can then typically come along and start adding in the line items that the customer wants to purchase. You have the same capability of fast order entry in this screen, just like we did in the sales order. And then as I move through the sale process, I've got a series of order hold capability that's available to me. So I could be processing it. The customer says, hey, look, can I place it on hold? I need to go and get my credit card. I need to go and do something. We have an order hold management area in here that allows me to place that order on hold. Secondly, if the customer is over their credit limit, whether it be trading terms or whether it be by monetary amount, there is an automated hold process that will put the customer on hold, and you've got hold reasons in here. It can also trigger workflow. That means somebody must go and look at that. It could be a credit hold release. Somebody needs to call the customer to maybe extend trading terms, whatever it may be, ask them for a check to make their payment. That sort of information can be captured and triggered by order holds, as well as some of our order events in terms of what's the next step in this process. I would then move through the traditional, add some charges if I need to, pick, pack and ship, and then invoice the sales order out. Should be noted on this screen that what will be asked for before we can process the order is a payment window. That payment window then must take the payment as a prepayment on the order. So here I'd be able to go, all right, let's go and submit my payment, put in the amount, fill in the credit card details. We can actually have those credit card details stored on file and then submit the order. So that then becomes the call center option in terms of being able to add an order into the system. Okay. Let me show you what the web POS actually looks like. So I've just gone to my internet browser. I'm using the same store as I used with the MPOS demonstration. Here I'm able to, as a user, log in. Keep in mind, folks, what I'm doing here is strictly over an internet browser. Zero footprint on the local device that I'm using. So it means then that any device that renders an internet connection will enable you then to be able to process sale. When I log in, it presents me with the screen, very similar to the MPOS one that we saw. The functions, I won't go through because it is basically the same sort of concept as we did the MPOS. I'm able to go into my current transactions, add the sale, add the customer, do all those traditional mechanisms that we saw before, but all of this is controlled and managed by a web browser. All right, my last one. How am I going for time, Lachlan?
Good.
So this is the order that I'm going to use for Lachlan to go through the manufacturing process. I'm logging in. And for those of us that aren't familiar, this is what we call our enterprise POS application. So this is what would typically run on your point-of-sale machine. That's the cash register sitting in the store. Same sort of concept. I'd come in here and I could do a search for my customer. I'm just going to do a search for Matt. Once I find it, there I am. I select it. It again adds the customer to this particular sale. I would then come along and say, well, look, what items do I want? Well, why don't we do a television? I think it was a television, wasn't it?
Soundbar.
Soundbar.
Got to coordinate the demo.
Sorry, it was a television. It's now a soundbar. So all I did in the EPOS application was simply do a search for the soundbar. It's then returned that product because it has been assorted to that particular store. What I will do then, I could click on product details and see additional information, but what I'm simply going to do now is just select that product. You'll notice it inserts the soundbar into the order line, and you'll also see underneath that this particular product is on a promotion, and there's a discount offering. And we notice there that the discount is, it's 2% off the price. I'm happy with that. What I am going to do now is go into my transactions. I'm going to say, well, look, I don't have this in store, Matt, but what I can do is create for you a customer order. So I've just gone into there and I've said, yes, this is the customer order. Here's the contact information. There's my phone number. The shipping and delivery will ship all. And it says, well, what delivery address do you want? Let's send it to the 124 Anywhere address. Not that one. Select that. What date do you want it? We'll take it on the 19th. What shipping method are we going to use? Standard's going to be fine. Any charges? No, I'm nice. I'm not going to make any charges. And then we'll go save all. When I actually save all, you'll see and notice that the solution has been configured for a deposit. $12.62 is the deposit. We'll take cash. We'll pay that. Do you want to collect payment for this shipping? No. It'll now tell me that the order has been created and a receipt will be sent to that email address. So now what I'll do is I'll go over into AX, into my company. If I go over into my accounts receivable and take a look at my sales orders, you will see there are sales. The second sales order has been created for that particular item, and that soundbar with a quantity of 1 at 112 unit with our discount gives us the 109.76. So let's just recap quickly on those different methods of getting a sales order in. The first one we did was e-commerce. So that is an online ordering solution. The second one we did was through what we call our modern POS client device. Typically, think of that as a roving mobile sale within a store or within a store particularly. The third one we took a look at then was the standard. We sort of touched on the standard sales order entry. We didn't demo it specifically. The fourth one we took a look at was call center, showing you how then using the call center application we can manage the customer and get sales quickly into the solution. The fifth one we took a look at was the web POS, so therefore enhancing or broadening the modern POS application, giving us just an internet browser, so therefore opening up to more sales type activities. And the last one we just took you through was the standard enterprise POS, which is using a cash register. So in terms of the demo scenario, that kind of takes care of the first part. I'm going to hand over to my buddy now, and he's going to take us through some of the planning activities on that demand. Thanks so much.
All right, so what we're going to have a look at is some of the aspects around planning, making a product. So the product that we actually just sold there was something that we actually manufacture. So we're going to have a look at some aspects of manufacturing, just to give you a bit of a breadth in terms of what's there in the product. So I like to use this in terms of sort of saying, like, when you look at the supply chain, how do you sort of plan the environment? So on the which way are you looking at? On your left, it'll be demand. So we might have a demand signal that could come from our sales order, that could come from our forecast, for example. So we'll have a quick look at those. Then on the right-hand side, we've got supply. The supply aspects about managing our vendors, our suppliers that we're working with. So we'll have a look at a little bit of supply aspects in terms of procurement, sourcing, and managing RFQs, for example, and where that can fit into the product. And of course, in the middle, we have a distribution and planning from a perspective of if we're going to make something, we need to sort of plan and control. So at the very bottom level, we need to sort of think about the design. So if you look at the horizontal columns or rows across here, we've got the product design. And so when you design the aspects of the information that goes into Dynamics AX, you can set all these parameters up on the item to control how the business process is going to flow. And when we talk about the planning aspect from the middle, we might talk about demand forecasting, distribution planning, supply planning. It's really around that inventory aspects and where we're going to put our inventory. And then at the top, we might have aspects of warehouse management, production control activities, manufacturing execution. So we'll have a look at a lot of those little aspects in the time that we have. So that's sort of setting the scenes. Let's switch over and have a look here. So this is a sales order that represents the sales order that Matt would have come into the system here. And so it's from our Matt customer, and that's our address. I'm going to go and have a look at the item setup here. And we'll have a look and we'll see that this item, if we look at the planning aspects, that this is a production item. So we're actually going to produce this item. If we have a look at our engineering tab, we can have a look at the BOM designer, and we can see that this is made up of a bill of materials and a sub-production as well. Now, I've run master planning while Matt was talking there. So we can go across to our master planning module in AX, so I can run master scheduling. Now, you can run it, of course, overnight. It'll run during the day with the dynamic plan, for example, if you do CTP and you do an explosion from that sales line, for example. So there's a number of operational aspects in terms of running. Now, so I've run it. And if we have a look at our planned orders here, I can see my T0012 item here. And if we go and have a look at the explosion, we can see what makes up this particular item. So we can see that we have a sub-production here. It happens to be at a different site. So within the same legal entity, we could produce at a different site from a sub-production perspective, move it over to the site where we're going to do final assembly. So that's all into the planning aspects in terms of how do you organize yourselves internally and how's your internal supply chain aspect. So we might have a planned production to make that, and then we might need to transfer it between sites to actually consume it as a sub-production. We might need to actually purchase something. So we've got a item here that we don't have. So this is a planned purchase order because we need to go and procure to finish our particular soundbar item. So let's go and execute on this. So first one is that you'll see that we actually have actions messages, and this is something, there's quite a lot of parameters in the master planning aspects in Dynamics AX and gives you indicators. So if we actually went and had a look at this particular item, we'd actually have on-hand stock, so it probably wouldn't make sense to actually go and make it. So the action messages tells me that I should probably go and cancel this. I'm going to execute it because I want to show you some other aspects of the system here. So we're going to just walk through these different sub-productions and productions and see where they all fit in. So I'm going to go and firm this. We'll see this one's a planned production order. And that's going to come out into our production module, and we'll have it over in production orders here. So we'll see the item that we have. So we can go through the process of estimating it. This is going to start to look at our estimated costs before we produce it. I could go and release it. I could do scheduling, for example. And in this particular case, we can do either operations, so longer range scheduling. I could do job scheduling down to the actual minute in terms of how we want to sort of plan the production capacity that we've got to manage. So I've got two different sort of forms, and how we manage that scheduling aspect is really for the production execution part of it. So I could start this production, for example, and then we could start working on it. Now, how do we interact with that production order? We might have people on the shop floor that interact with production. So if I come over and have a look and jump onto this machine. Now, for the sake of projecting it, I'm just going to use a normal machine here, but I'm going to log into the production floor app. So this is an app that's designed to be a tablet app. The idea here being that I could use a tablet, some sort of touch device, if that's the sort of form factor or input mechanism that I want on production. This will give me an overview of different jobs. If I've got messages that might be sent to me, I might have new jobs in the system that I can work with. So if I scroll right across to the end, so 371, I think that was our production order, but let's check. So 371 was our production order here. And so we can have a look, for example, at the jobs there, and we can see the status and where they're at from a processing perspective. So we'll see those jobs are waiting to be executed. And so this is the tablet version of the app. Of course, we have a Windows client version of the app that you could use as well. So I could look at the details behind the job. I can view what's going to go in, and I could put work instructions on there, for example. So for my particular operation. I'm going to start the job and work on it, so then I could report progress. So this is going to give me whether I need to report defects, good quantity produced, for example. So I'm just going to go and say OK on that. So this gives you a mechanism to, of course, input remotely to, of course, the core ERP application, because it's running from a tablet app. So it's calling web services and interacting with the back-end ERP application. So you can think of that in terms of, saying, where do you want to get that input so you get the right input from the production floor. Now, I won't work through that whole production order. It was just to give you a bit of a flavor for how you can use different devices. There is a Windows client device as well. Now, if I have a look at the job back here, you'll see that this one's ended. So I've updated that from the tablet application, and we've interacted with the core production order. So you have that mechanism to say, how do those workers really work on the floor? How do I get that feedback in the system? Alrighty. So let's have a look at the other components that we needed to buy or build or transfer. So we'll see that we had a suggested transfer order here. So this was a subcomponent that we would have produced if I finished that production order. And so this would have been then the transfer order that would have been executed them. So I'm going to go and execute the transfer order, and that we can go and work on. So we're going to go across to inventory. And we're going to have a look at our transfer orders. It will now be an actual transfer order, so our transfer order. So we can see that this is our transfer order created here, and I can decide what I'm going to do with it. So I could go and pick it, for example. We can add it to the picking list. We can register. So this is our picking list. Now, there's multiple different ways that you might actually produce the picking list, and we're going to see the new warehouse module, for example, interacted. So you'll see the load planning workbench released to warehouse. So this is the WMS 2 capabilities that we've had, or WMS 1 that we've had in the product for a while. So it gives you the ability to look at I might have some warehouses in my organization that are quite simple. They have very simple practices, basic paper, picking lists, that sort of stuff. Or I might go to full RF capabilities that you'll see in a minute. So you've got a different ways to sort of interact. So this is a transfer order. So we're going to ship the one of those across to our production site. So I'm going to ship the transfer order. And we're going to say, OK. So we transferred it. And then we're going to go and receive it into our location. And we need to say that we're going to receive one of them. And so, of course, this is then the transfer. Of course, this would be being done by the different people at the different warehouses to simulate that movement. And, of course, you can do things like intercompany purchasing, those sort of things, and there's the intercompany transfer costs, reports and stuff like that if you're doing more complex interlegal entity sales and purchase order scenarios. So this is within one legal entity for the sake of the exercise. So that's our transfer. So we've got those materials available for our T0012 product that we're producing. So if we have a look now, we've got one raw material. So if we again have a look at our explosion, what we'll see is that we've done our transfer. That's been executed. We've got our planned purchase order here. Okay, now you'll see from a planning perspective, I've got the ability to say, well, maybe I want to turn this into a request for quote. So maybe I don't know the vendor that we're going to procure it from. I actually want to go and ask other vendors to actually bid on this particular item. So I can transfer it to a request for quotation. I'm going to go and do a manual entry of a request for a quotation so that you can sort of see that process as well. So I'm going to go and put in a request for quotation. It could be a solicitation type. So there's a lot of functionality that's been added from R3 and CU8 to add sealed bids processes and stuff like that into the RFQ processes. So there's additional functionality. You can do scoring criteria, things like that you can score the vendors based on the certain bids that they're providing. So we're going to go and put in a request for quotation, and the item number that we're going to put in here is going to be our T000, which is that plug that we needed. And then we can choose the vendors. We might want to find different vendors that we want to select for bidding. So I'm going to pick this big supplier here, for example. So that gives me, I'm just going to keep it fairly simple. We're going to just request this one supplier, which is an alternate supplier. I just want to test them out to see whether they could supply something. So this would be an RFQ. So what I could do here is actually send and publish to the vendor portal. So we do have a vendor portal that you can use to interact with those vendors. So I'm going to hit publish, and we're going to hit OK. And so this is going to publish it out to the portal. So I have the ability to log on to the portal. And you can have vendors, for example, you'll see here the ability to sign up. So you could have unsolicited vendors. So there's all that process in terms of collecting vendors that you might not use. They can go up in the request for quote process so that you can use vendors that have said we can supply something, and so you could use them in the process. So I won't go through the sign-up process. I'm just going to go and log in. Now this is a secure login, so it's going to ask me to log in. In this particular case, I'm going to use credentials, which could be Windows Live ID, could be Yahoo. In this particular case, I'm going to use my Azure credentials, if I can remember. Big supplier at daxdemo.microsoft.com. So how you allow the vendors to sign on to your portal is up to you from an infrastructure perspective. But there's capabilities that we've added to allow you to use those external authentication sort of mechanisms. So this is the vendor portal that the vendor could interact with. We can see requests for quotations down the bottom. So this is the one that I just created for that particular plug. So they could submit a bid for it, they could decline, and you could go through that process of evaluating. And so this gives you a little bit of an idea in terms of saying, well, if I'm doing procurement and sourcing through my planning, how do I just extend that reach to that procurement department to allow them to find the best price for particular products. So we could go through the biddings process and then request it. And that gives you a little bit of a look in terms of saying, where's the procurement activities come in. Now, let's go through, let's say that we know the vendor and we've got a standard vendor, the US 103 here. So what I'm going to do is actually going to firm this, and this is going to create an actual purchase order. So we can go and have a look into the accounts payable, for example, our purchase orders. And so what I can do here is our US 103. I could go and confirm the purchase order. And I'll just do the simple version of confirm. So at this point, we're communicating to the vendor that we actually want these products. And so I'm going to hand over to Matt for a sec, because we're going to simulate the guys in the warehouse with a truck rolling up and saying, I've got these products that are rolled up. Let's go and actually receive them into the warehouse with the new advanced warehousing capabilities.
All right, thank you. I think I'm 2, right?
Yeah. That's me.
Take. There we go. So, who is familiar with the new warehousing solution that comes in R3? Who has no idea what I'm talking about? Okay, good. So I can do a little bit of an overview and a bit of a brief. So as part of the release of AX 2012 R3, what we did is we introduced a new warehousing solution. And let me explain why. Those of us that are familiar with AX, what we found is the solution that we had for warehouse management, although was good enough in some certain instances, really was a little bit inflexible in terms of catering for the larger distribution type organization. If you followed the bouncing ball in that particular way, then you were set. But we soon learned that we were missing opportunity, and a lot of our customers were actually telling us the solution's not quite where it needs to be, and if you want to round out your offering, we should be looking at increasing that capability. So we went to market. And in doing so, we toyed with the idea of whether or not we'll go with a solution that was more bespoke, developed and integrate, or is it really more important for us to go with a solution that is built within Dynamics AX and has that integration out of the box? I think the vote that came from the customer community, as well as our own internal community, was we really need a solution that's built within AX so that integration is not the problem. So in doing so, we acquired a solution from one of our vendors called Blue Horseshoe, and we spent probably a good 4 months getting the solution ready for R3 and integrated with a great deal of other modules that we have within AX, and that's the outcome. And I'm going to show you some of that capability now within the solution. But first and foremost, it is for those of us that are familiar with AX, from a warehouse management perspective, we now have 2 additional menus. We have a warehouse management menu and we have a transportation management menu. Previously, everything was sort of bundled under inventory management there. And let me just open up warehouse management for you real quick. Now, without getting into too much detail, I can talk on this all day, but I'll just highlight for you some of the neat, cool features that give this solution a great deal more power. We're now catering for organizations that simply have a small warehouse. They want the capability to automatically put things away. They want the capability to automatic pick. They want the capability to be able to do true license plate tracking, not pallet IDs, true license plate tracking, meaning I can at anywhere within my warehouse floor do an inquiry and find out via pallet what stock is sitting on that pallet. I can license plate them. They're all fully barcode scanned. And in addition to that, I also have a mobile device which is native out of the box. So for our customers now, it just limits the need to have to go externally to be able to do some warehouse automation via a mobile handheld device. We render all the menus available to you there. So looking at some of those, yes, you have the traditional setup of the warehouse, but in addition to that, there's a handful of new feature function sets which can be turned on and turned off in terms of how we're going to operate against that warehouse. Do we allow bill of ladings to be printed before confirmation? There's a reservation hierarchy for stock reservation. Is it before batch? Is it after batch? Do I need the serial number to be picked specifically at order time, or can I pick it at actual warehouse picking time? So there's a whole bunch of new things that have been added to that particular module. What is important though, and it's new, is this concept of what we call location directives. Those of us that were familiar with the old warehousing solution, basically what it did is it allowed me to set up these things called areas. Areas were then rolled up into zones. Zones were then put on the item. And whatever location was in that area and zone would mean it would put it away to. It was very generic. What these location directives do now is it opens up that whole animal, and it allows me to actually get very specific in terms of rack, shelf, bin, wherever I want to place this item based upon weight, height, physical dimensions, or almost just traditional zoning is available to you in there. So I guess what this does now is provide for me a framework in how I want to put and pick items within the warehouse. So I'm rambling on a little bit about the setup, but I just wanted to, because the hands were light in terms of capability, I just wanted to take you through what's available. Now, as Lachlan said, you ran master planning, right? He ran master planning. The output of that then creates for me a purchase order. You'll notice here I've got a purchase order that's sitting at open order, and this is for the component that was on his bill of materials. So all of the other BOM items I had in stock. This particular item I didn't. It's therefore created the purchase order to the supplier. I'm now going to mimic a warehousing process by receiving that into stock. So how would I do that? I'm going to jump over into my emulator here, and you'll notice I'm just going to log off and log on so you can see it. In my emulator, I'm running what typically would be the menu that I see on that handheld device out of the box. I log on. It's security enabled, and when I do so, I'm presented then with the main menu that I've been allocated to me as a user. You'll notice there that I have an inbound process. Choosing the inbound process then, I've got a variety of different options that are available to me. I want to tell you guys that these menu items, you do not need a developer in-house to get these menu items to appear on your RF device. They're all configured by a drag and drop function. We've provided all of the menu options over RF. You simply drag them in. You then apply a user credential to it. As soon as I log in, I have that menu available to me. The first thing that I'm going to do now in this purchasing process is do a receival. Let me just cheat by copying the purchase order number here, but typically I would scan it or punch it in. When I click OK, it's going to ask me, well, what item on the purchase order is it that you're receiving, Matt? It was the T000, which was line order number 1. It's my 110 volt plug. What quantity do I want? Incidentally, folks, you'll notice mine's defaulting to each, only because I'm lazy when I set this up. You can actually set it up to be multiple units of measure with unit conversions, and the system will then do that calculation for you also. I'm just going to go OK at this stage. Now, because I've said in my location profile, I want to track goods on a license plate. It's asking me, well, Matt, go to the receiving dock, pick up that particular soundbar, what is it, the plug, put it on a cart, a trolley, a license plate, whatever it is that you're moving it to. I'm going to call it LP SB1. All right, and it tells me now that work is complete. Let me just cancel that for a second, jump over into the warehouse management process, and what that's done for me is it's created this concept of work. Those of us that were familiar with the old solution, we called it transports. So it's now created for me a bunch of work, and if we look at the last one there, purchase order, it says there is an instruction now for somebody that has to go and pick up from the receiving dock one of those plugs, and they have to put it, and we can see that by the pick and put action down the bottom here, they need to put that into location FL-001, which, by the way, was the available location for that particular item within my warehouse. So automatically now, if I'm using what we call system-directed put away, meaning somebody has a device, the next one just pops up on their screen and they do it in the order that it was received, or I can have user-directed put away, where I can walk along and go, oh, all right, well, I'll do that one first, scan, pick it up and put it away. So we now have a lot of those capabilities available to us out of the box. That then brings the item into the warehouse, and if we just do a quick look, oh, actually, I better do the put away first of all, sorry. So now it's created a work ID. I'm going to jump over into my handheld device, and I'm going to do what we call a purchase order put away. Here I'll scan the work order ID. In this case, it's that. It tells me this location on this license plate, this particular item, one each of them, OK. And then done. So now that particular item has been put away. If we were to do a stock on hand look at that, it would show me that that one item in that one location exists. If I go to warehouse management, I go to on hand by location. I do it on site 2, warehouse 24. FL-001, there is our item, plug 110V, sitting available, now ready for manufacture. Okay, we're going to switch hats yet again. What do you want?
Switch back.
5?
Yep. All right, so Matt showed the RF capabilities being used in the warehouse, but we can also use those RF capabilities actually in the production facility as well. So we can do production picking, we can do reporters finish and put away at the end of production, for example. So this gives you the ability to interact again. We saw the tablet application, but we can use the RF capabilities to move the inventory around in the system as well. So Matt talked about the menuing system. So this is the menuing system. So it gives you the ability to, for example, we can move the menus around. So I'm going to put production pick, for example, at the top. You'll see when I refresh my menu and log in, and if I go to production pick will be at the top. So it's a real-time integration, and it gives you the ability for the people that are managing the back office to give the people that are on the device the information that they need in terms of the menus and functionality and stuff like that. So you can control the users who have access to that. So let's go and have a look. So we did master planning before, and so we've done sub-production and we've done raw materials, and we have the last one, which is the actual production for the finished item that we were going to sell. So let's go and firm this, and this will be the production that we're going to produce our finished format to go and do transport on and then move it out. So So, of course, we're doing a make-to-order scenario in this particular case. So, of course, Matt went through retail. So, of course, that's a strategy. We can have, of course, make-to-stock. That's really all the parameter definition that you really drive in the setup of the item to say, what's that strategy that we're going to implement? We can also use lean functionality. We'll have a look in a sec. So whether that's make-to-order or make-to-stock, we can use that to implement a manufacturing strategy. So, of course, we're doing standard discrete functionality here. So if I have a look at the production order, we'll see that this is reserved. This is important for the warehouse management to reserve the inventory for when it's going to be using it, to move the stock around. So I'm going to go and estimate. When you do the estimation, it gives you the ability to have a look at the manufacturing cost. So we can have a look at, for example, the costing sheet, and the item that we consumed was $20 for the actual finished part that we actually went and ordered. So we can look at the material breakdown, labour breakdown. Of course, this is at the estimation phase, and then we can go back and compare them after we actually produce. So you've got that visibility into the costs as well. Of course, we could schedule it. We had a look at scheduling before as well. So in this particular case, I'm going to go and release. And you'll see the interaction here with the warehouse management module. It goes and creates what's called a production wave and the work. So Matt talked about the work in the warehouse, and the work is being pick and put, so I can move inventory around. So the pick and put in this particular case is raw materials. We need to move raw materials into where we're going to produce that particular production. So let's go and have a look at that. We can say that we're going to start, so that really depends when you're going to move the inventory around and when you're going to start production. So let's go and have a look at our warehouse device. So I'm going to go and do a production pick. Now, I can use the work, and again, normally we'd interact with, for example, the details, depending on how we'd give the worker the information to actually go and do the task. So you'll see the work is actually being created here. So I'm just going to copy that in this particular case, and I'm going to go and say, here's the work. I'm going to go and scan the location, which is FL002. I'm going to go and select the palette, and I've got a slightly different one to what Matt used, but that's okay for the exercise. So we're going to go and pick, and we're going to go and put it, and that'll mean that we've got the material available for the production to be worked on. So let's go and finish off the production. So we're going to go back to production control, have a look at our production order. We could go and say start because our material's available. This will update background. And so at this point in time, we could go and update it in terms of saying, you know, we've produced it, assembled it. Now, in this case, we've only got one. Our route is fairly simple. It's an assembly step. So I'm going to hand over to Matt to give you an example in terms of how the warehouse can then interact with production as well to do a reporter's finish and put away.
All right, so do we have many manufacturers in the room? All right, so one of the things we do with warehousing, apart from the location directives, is we basically put an input and an output location on the work center or on the resource. And let me show you how we do that. So over underneath our organization menu, over underneath our resource group for argument's sake, and the one we've been working with is our cabinet assembly, you'll notice that we have this locations area that says if I'm dealing with warehouse 24, where is my input location for raw material going to be issued to? So think of this, I did the receipt, picked it up from the receiving dock and it put it to FL001. Now what we're saying is when issue of material needs to be put to that location based upon the route, then where do you want me to put it? Well, here it wants it to put it to PRD FL-02. Now, from an output perspective, when we do what we call a report as finished, where do you want me to put the stock? All right, and in this case, I'm saying we'll go and put it to FL009. All right, so here we are determining the locations for our manufacturing work centers, where goods will be put and where the finished product will be put. All right, closing that form now, going back over into our handheld device, you'll notice if I just jump one step back, underneath my production menu, I have what we call a report as finished and put away task. So what this will do by selecting report as finished, it's going to ask me for the production ID. I'll copy that. I'll put in that production ID. It'll ask me, well, for what item is it? It'll ask me for the quantity. It'll ask me for the unit. And it'll ask me for the license plate in which I'm doing this. As soon as I click OK, it's going to take the manufacturer that Lachlan did. It's then going to complete the production order. It's going to move it to the FL location, allowing me now to dispatch that sales order out. So let's assume we've done that. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll go now over into my sales order. If we think about shipping, we think about transportation. I have several ways in which I can dispatch my sales order. Some companies use a transportation module. That transportation can manage your own fleet of internal trucks, or it has what we call a transportation engine integration, where we can link to FedEx, UPS, and a couple of other suppliers, main suppliers. We make those engines available to you on Partner Source and on Customer Source. You can download those and load them up into the transportation module, which means then those engines are there for you out of the box. What do those engines do? They do rate shopping. So as soon as we determine within transportation what it is that we want to do, and that is it mileage based? Is it volume based, the charge? What we're able to do then is call that out, rate shop, and then return it back onto the sales order itself. So here we are on the sales order. What I will do in this instance is I'll go to my warehouse management screen. I'll go to my load planning workbench. In my load planning workbench, what I'm going to do is I'll see here it's for this particular zip code delivery. I'm going to add this to a new load. By adding it to a new load, I have a standard load template which has physical dimensions. I'm then going to go ahead and go OK on that. By doing so, from this screen, I have my route and rating option. I can then go to my route and rate workbench. And then what I'll do is I'll just make sure when I do my rate shop that I'm returned with some carriers that are able to ship this particular item for me. And looking at that, okay, some of my demo data looks a bit crazy, but looking at that, the zone-to-zone standard ground is the best because the total rate then returned for that particular soundbar was $70. At this stage, I can assign that to the order, and what will happen is it will assign a miscellaneous charge to the sales order for $70. So assigning that there, I close. I then go in and close this form. Now I'm ready to release to my warehouse. By releasing to the warehouse here, I'll get my work created, and then once that work creates, I can then start to move through my handheld device to actually do the shipping and the loading. And what that would look like on the screen itself, if I just jump over to the emulator, I'll go back here. I'll go to my outbound process this time. You'll notice I've got a sales picking and a sales loading. By choosing the sales picking, I can scan the work order. It would then say, go and pick up the item from this location and move it to the bay door or the outbound dock. So that will then take care of the dispatch and the sale of that particular sales order. All right, yours.
All right, so we've had a look at, we'll switch back. We've had a look at, you know, from an end-to-end perspective. Matt's gone through the retail. We've actually produced something. We've gone through the planning exercises, and we've actually shipped something all the way out. So that sort of gives you a big end-to-end breadth in terms of the, you know, the capabilities in Dynamics AX to sort of pull together. Obviously, you know, you'll have to take your requirements and fit them in, and there's a lot of parameters to control the configuration and stuff like that. But that's really the richness of Dynamics AX to give you that capability. So I thought I'd have a look at another manufacturing scenario here. So I've got a different item. If we're going to have a look at the planning parameters up the top of this item. So before we did a standard discrete, and we'll see the default order type here is a Kanban. Now, Dynamics AX won't convert you to a lean organization. That's what you need to do yourself, and then you can apply how your processes would be implemented in AX from business management perspective to manage the costs, manage inventory, and do that back office functionality. If you're going to go lean, you need to organize that yourself in terms of your lean journey and how you're going to organize the floor and organize your business processes. But AX gives you the ability to capture the cost, manage inventory. So let's have a quick look at here. Now, I've got my default order, and we can go and produce something. So again, in terms of, it could be a make-to-order strategy. I'm going to go and put in an order here for Matt again for this particular item. Now, I've got in the back end what's called the Kanban rules. So the Kanban rules can be triggered based on an event, for example. This is an event, which is a sales order. And so we can go and have a look at those rules and the configuration. So if I go and have a look at my Kanban rules, if I have a look up the top here, this is configured for this particular item, which is my X200 item that we've created here. And so this gives me the rules in terms of how do I move that Kanban around, what's the minimum quantities, is it automatically planned, for example, what's the cards, if I use circulating cards, for example. I can use the event. So in this particular case, we've got an event that's a Kanban event that's a sales order event. So when the sales order is created, it automatically creates a Kanban that we could go and execute to manufacture a specific product. So let's go and have a look here. What we have the ability to use is the scheduling board. So the scheduling board, if we have a look, we can find the particular work cell. And so if we have a look up the top here, work cell, I can change it to be the work cell where we're doing the assembly of these particular products. So these give you a visual indicator of the work that's available in that particular work cell. And so we'll see here that this is the work cell. And if I have a look at the details behind this particular one, it tells me that it's overdue. That could be based on our planning parameters. So that interaction that, we've got master planning at the background for inventory management. Where does that sort of fit in? The order, when was the order expected to be released? So we've got little indicators to say what's happening with that particular Kanban for the person to manage it. So we can have a look at the details similar to what we did on the standard production order, but now in a more visual way with the Kanban and the Kanban scheduling board, and of course, which is helping you implement those lean type strategies. So this is the Kanban scheduling board. I could move that till tomorrow if I needed to do that, so I can move these jobs around based on capacity. You'll see down the bottom it tells me that I've got 1, so I've got capacity here. I could do 5 in a day of these particular assembly orders. You could change that based on the production flow. That could be time, for example. So this gives you the indicator of what's happening. Now, let's jump across, and earlier we saw the ability to transfer materials from an inventory perspective. So we can transfer materials in terms of the warehouse. So we can trigger that in Kanbans as well. So I can move inventory around. These are called transfers. Now, I didn't set those up in my particular production flow in this particular case, just to sort of save a little bit of time for the sake of the exercise, but we could do transfers from a Kanban, which is, of course, moving inventory around based on the signal around the system. In this particular case, I'm going to do a processing job, which is the manufacturing event. So if I have a look here, and again, I can change excuse me, work cells based on where I'm working. Excuse me. So this gives me the ability to see at my particular work cell what's all of the Kanbans that I've got available, what I might be doing with them. So I can also see production instructions, for example. They can be attached to the product or the rule. I can see raw materials that I might need to pick for this, for example. I can see if there was any transfer jobs that might have been needed to be executed to bring materials around, for example. And so this gives you the ability to visualize what's happening with that particular Kanban. So similar to what we saw with the RF capabilities, some of those menus, when we were using the RF device, I could do the Kanban pick and put away as well, so we can interact with the RF in the warehouse, for example. But I'm going to keep it fairly simple. I can say I'm going to start start the production, similar to what we do on a production order. I can report good quantities, error quantities, information. So this is the feedback mechanism. But you'll see up on the top on the ribbon here, I can, if I've got my printed Kanban card running around the system, and you'll see when I print the Kanban card here, what it'll, of course, give me up the top is the barcode. It'll print any work instructions that are working as well. But I can use this as the visual indicator running around the floor, scan that to indicate which operation am I doing, am I starting, completing, and stuff like that. So at the work cell, you can interact with scanning and the visual indicator to update the production. So I'm just going to hit complete, which is going to report as finished, essentially there. So that's another example of how you can do mixed mode. Now, you may not, you may do discrete production at one site in your production. You may do another site that's starting to implement lean, and you can use lean over in that site. So you can use mixed mode functionality depending on how you want to produce items in your environment. So Dynamics AX is kind of unique in that, in terms of the strategies that you're trying to employ, is really just parameterization and configuration to help you implement those business processes. So you can use this together with the discrete production as we saw before. So what we've tried to go through is, from a manufacturing supply chain planning perspective, is, really demand signals, where that comes in. There is an Excel-based statistical forecasting. I skipped over that quickly when we went before. We can use an Excel to import a forecast. Master planning would pick that up, for example. We did distribution planning and moving, and we did supply, so we had to look at procurement sort of activities. So let's switch topics a little bit and have a look at some capabilities, for example, finance. So Matt, we started to sell some stuff to Matt. So I can do what's called the customer aging snapshot here. So if we look at finance and look at collections activities, what I can choose is the companies, if I work in collections across different legal entities. So Matt might work in a different legal entity from a retail perspective, and I might have production in a different legal entity. So I can run the customer aging snapshot, for example, and it's going to go and look at the activities in all those different legal entities to give me a centralized view of the exposure that we might have to Matt. So in this particular case, I'm just picking my aging as 30, 60, 90 days. And so this is going to run in the background and give me that overview of what's happening here. So if we go and have a look in our collections, I can have a look at the collections list page, and we'll go and find our Matt customer. And we can see him here, and we can see a little indicator, so I can drill into the details here. And so you'll see that I've got transactions from two different companies, two different legal entities. So this is one area in the application that we can start to look across data in multiple different legal entities. We can do that, for example, in planning. We can have demand and supply and net each other off between legal entities, for example. So I can see that I have got one invoice here for Matt that's a little bit older. Matt showed you some capabilities in the call center. You've got order holds capability. So you can use order holds to put an order on hold, for example, before you go and look at past activity. So you've got that information to actually go and make a business decision in terms of, do I really want to fulfill this order through the process? So you can use those. Now, if it is late, and this particular one is, you could go and create a case and go and do follow activities to actually go and follow up on the customer to go and collect on that. So you've got that integration in the product in terms of not only the supply chain, but the back-end financials to actually drive, of course, what you're trying to do, which is, of course, generate revenue and hopefully make a small profit on that as you drive through. Unless you're not for a profit, maybe then you're just trying to balance expenses. Alrighty. So, of course, these capabilities are driven by the internal organization capabilities. So we can have a look at organizational hierarchies. I can look at organization hierarchy here, which is centralized payment. And so the options that I had for two different legal entities is driven by this organizational hierarchy. So this is a configuration tool for pieces of functionality through the application to say, this is how functionality is driven. In that particular case, centralized payments. in terms of using the credit control functionality. Now, we can also use this capability for reporting. So if I jump across, for example, to another role over here, we can have a look at excuse me, we can have a look at, for example, income statement by business unit. And so I've got the ability to do reporting tree here. So this is Management Reporter. This is the web view of Management Reporter. And so Management Reporter is a financial reporting application that you, of course, get with Dynamics AX and the different Dynamics products. And so you can use this to, of course, report that financial activity. So I can look at, for example, based on those organizational hierarchies, I can look at, my different units through the system. And so, of course, in Dynamics AX, you have financial dimensions. You can go down and do P&L by dimensions in the system. There is a new capability that was introduced in R2 to do a balance sheet by dimension, so you can do balance sheet down to one dimension. So those are capabilities that were introduced in the product over the course of the AX 2012 lifecycle. But these capabilities gives you the ability to look at the reporting, and if you've got the right permissions, of course, I can drill back into Dynamics and open up. Of course, this is now going from the web into the Windows client and opening up the Windows client to give you the ability to drill into those transactions. We could go and drill into the original transaction. I could go and see the details. So this is a customer letter, for example. I could go and do a print preview. And so we could go and see that this was a collection letter sent to the customer. So you've got that ability to, I won't print it out for the sake of the exercise. We can see it here in the details that this was a collection letter for the $20. It's a lot, or not much to go and follow up on, but you still might want to go and collect on your $20, right? It was a bet that you made. Do you want the $20 back? All right. So you've got the reporting capabilities in financials to actually drill into the information. Now, you can start to, of course, this is financial reporting. You can start to bring, of course, analytics all together in what we call role centers in Dynamics AX. Now, really the role center is SharePoint, and SharePoint is bringing together the business analytics capabilities that are provided through SQL Server that we run on the SQL Server analysis services and presenting it in the view there. So Matt went through a lot of retail. We can use these to, of course, look at our customers, how we're doing from a customer sales perspective. And of course, these are interactive once they're made. We can look at customers by categories, wholesale customers, and see how we're doing. So you can build these to give you different web-based views for your management chain to go and report on the activity through the application. So, of course, these are just different views and how they're presented. Now, what Dynamics AX gives you the ability to do is actually pull this together and actually create them yourselves. So I'm going to go across to sales orders here, and you'll see a button in the application. So this just happens to be on the sales order list page, but you'll find that through different areas of the application. So I'm going to go and hit Analyze Data, and so this is going to go and open up Power View. So Power View is a piece of the business intelligence or the Power BI sort of capabilities that are provided through the Office functionality. Now, this is at the back end is actually the cube, so the business analytics cubes, and of course, when you implement Dynamics AX, you can extend those cubes, add different measures and dimensions. So I'm going to pick on customer sales in this particular case. And so we'll see our measure come here. Now we can go and have a look at analysis of this, for example, by customer information. So I could go and put on here, for example, customer group. And so, of course, this is customer by customer group, but I might want to go and say, well, make it look a little pretty, so I'm going to make it a chart. So this gives me my customer groups here, for example. Now, I can select in the area and go and say customer sales again, and we might want to put a different view on the data. So I might want to go and put it on and say that this is my country or region, for example. So customers by country or region, or sales by country or region. And then I might want to turn on the mapping capability. And so in this particular case, of course, we can drag these around. So you saw in some of these examples, these are the pre-built ones, but it's not that hard for your end users to actually go and build these yourself. So I built this fairly quickly. So now it's actually interactive, so you'll see the different groups. If I click on them, of course, the map will change. So within a few clicks, you can, of course, take that analytics data out of the back-end ERP application and present it for the users to use to go and see what's actually happening, make some decisions out of that back-end operational activity that's happening in the ERP application. So, of course, there's a lot more that you can do within the functionality of Dynamics AX. And this is really trying to give you a small component view of it. We haven't touched on a lot of the modules in terms of projects, for example. Manufacturing, we talked about manufacturing. You can do project-based manufacturing from a project, generate production orders, for example. So there's a lot more functionality. What we were trying to do here is give you a small breadth of what's actually in there and sort of whet your appetite for what it really is in terms of Dynamics AX.
Very good. Okay, that ends our session, guys. If you've got any questions, please feel free to use the mic. We'll stay up here. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.